Assalamu alaikum. David is terrorizing all the people who are praying in the mosque right now. So this evening, I'm here to speak. I'm here to speak and talk about some of the blessings in the Quran, some of the blessings of our religion here in Islam, particularly the blessings that we receive as a result of the commandments or ordainments that are given to us. So when we are kind of ordered or instructed specifically to do something or not to do something, and how that is a blessing in our lives as Muslims. So in order to talk about that, we've got to kind of back it up a little. We're going to start by talking about God. I don't know what it is. I don't have a little clicker. So, in Islam, the best way to try to learn about or understand God is to look at the 99 names. So we have 99 names for Allah, or God. Allah is just the Arabic word for God. And they cover a variety of fields. I didn't know how clear this would be on the projector. It's hard to fit 99 on one page. But they cover a number of things, such as, so let's hit the button once. Oh, I can't read that. Such as, oh, I can read that. The all-forgiving. Read it again. The compassionate. The merciful. The patient, the source of greatness, the loving, the beneficent. Stop there. And there are many others. There are 92 others. But what they all have in common is these are the attributes of God. So these help us not only understand who God is, these help us understand how God feels for us. These are things that when we experience them, we can only experience them through His will and His mercy. Right? So when we experience forgiveness, if He is all forgiveness, if all forgiveness comes from God, then any time that we experience that, if we encounter forgiveness, if we are forgiving someone, being forgiven, any time that we feel that or a part of that, then it is through God's will that that is happening. It only happens through God. And it goes with all the rest of that. Patience, love, mercy, compassion. Whenever we feel or experience or are part of any of these things, if they are of God, then we cannot be a part of them without Him being there with us. Now, in addition, they also help to teach us if that's how He treats us, and by us it means not just me but you as well, then that's how He would want us to treat each other. So these are also the types of things that we should know are, when we look at how to conduct our relationships and affairs with other human beings, this is how He would have us or expect us to be. And when we are doing it right, it would feel this way. So it would feel like love. It would feel like patience, like forgiveness, like compassion. So there's a great deal to studying and learning these things. I only focused in on a couple. I mean, I can tell you there is no all angry. There's no all wrathful. There's no all condemning. Those are, even if you can't read them all, I can promise you, they're not on that list. Those are not any of the names and things that we learn about God. They're not how He treats us, and they're not how He expects us to treat each other. So now that we know a little bit about God, how He treats us and how He expects us to treat each other, then we can kind of look at this question. And so I like to look at it in this light, where we ask, what are some of the biggest problems people deal with in their lives today? So hit it one more time. Top 3 answers are on the board. What do you think are some of the biggest problems? And as people, you have some experience with this. So tell me, what are some of the biggest problems in your lives? Or what do you think people would say, or the other people You don't have any problems, I understand. What are some of the biggest problems other people then experience in their lives? Money. Number one answer. What else? What do you think would be another one?
Prejudice.
Prejudice? Prejudice is a good one. We're not going to hit it because then it's not number two. It's pretty close. What else? What are the other problems? No one here. This is a blessed room that no one here has any problems. Relationships. And I've got one more that I was looking at in particular. And honestly, these three that I chose and put up here are from a brother and I did a small group where a group of Christians had called us up and asked if they could come out and ask some questions when we were talking with them. These are the three that they brought up. So they, when we asked them what are the big, these are the three that came up. And so, third one.
Bad drivers on I-4.
Bad drivers on I-4. There we go. The three things that we found, and when we talk to other people and have done this before, that most people say are the problems that they're experiencing in their life deal with money, relationships, and health. And sadly, probably in that order. So, on money. This is from the Quran. And the English translation says, "O you who believe, do not eat up the amounts acquired through interest, doubled and multiplied. Obey God so that you may be successful." And that's from Surah 3, which is like the third chapter or book of the Quran, and it's verse number 130. So, as some of you might be familiar with, in Islam, interest is considered haram, or sinful, or unlawful. Right? So it is considered against the faith, and it is commanded, not to pay, or receive interest. Right? That these are sinful or ungodly things. And now when we look and we say that people have problems today in their life, most of them center around money. Right? What do you think the problems people have? Are they about having too much money? Do people complain there's too much money coming? The problems people complain about is that there's not enough money to pay the bills. The debt, the credit card debt, the interest, right? And what we've built in our society today is we've built a system on credit. Like you have to, in America, you have to have a credit score. You have to, if you're going to purchase a home, in other countries, small countries, I visited Jamaica a couple of times, and when you drive from the middle island of Jamaica, right, in the little local areas, you see these half-built houses with like 2 walls or 3 walls or 2 in a roof. And we asked the driver, and we said, why are all these, was there a storm that devastated you that built them? And he said, no. He said, this is how people build their houses. Because they live on the land, and as they can afford, they put up a wall. And when they can afford, they build another one. And when they can afford to cover it, they cover it. And slowly over time, they build themselves a house that they live in. So needless to say, they're not worried about the interest rate they're receiving from the bank on their mortgage. Right? They're not worried, there's no system of credit scores there that they're worried about in order to purchase or run a home. Right? But this country is developed that way. You have to. If you're going to own a home or live, that's how you do it. Most people don't have, a couple $100,000, sitting in the bank where they go, just buy this house in cash. So we have a system here built on debt, right? On not only acquiring debt, just to live, just to have a home, a basic thing that everyone in the world needs, right? But that you'll have debt for a brief period of 30 years. And we'll keep this over your head here for, your home isn't really your home for the next 30 years because of this debt and the interest you pay. And if anyone's ever seen, I think most people, if you bought a home, you look at the sheet and you realize, wow, that's how much over 30 years I'm going to pay in interest. It's always more than the price of the home itself even. So just foundationally, we have a society built on interest here. You have credit cards and this entire concept that we can buy things that I can't afford. The entire concept and industry of credit cards is built on buying things I can't afford. Because if I had cash, I would just do that. If I could write a check, if I had the money, I would. I don't have the money yet, but I really want this anyway. And that's okay. And if you pay your credit card, it works. Right? Like it's okay. You're not in trouble. You're not breaking the law. Right? In America, it's okay to do these things. But yet in America, so many people, the biggest thing people complain about and the problem that haunts them in their lives today is money. And if we look back 1,400 years ago, to the time of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, if we look back 600 years before that, the time of another prophet, Isa alayhi salam, Jesus Christ, if we look back in the times of any of the number of prophets, and we don't even have to go back that far, we went a couple hundred years to when this country was formed, people didn't have problems of money. Money wasn't a concern. Because it's just been recently, in the last 100 or so years, that we've really institutionalized the concept of buying things you can't afford and making it okay. And this was a new thing that we did. This wasn't something that has been done in any of the times of prophets or throughout history. It was never part of the message. Jesus didn't say love each other, forgive each other, and pay your visa bill on time. This is something new, and we created this ourselves, and with it, we brought problems. Problems that could be avoided if we did things the right way. So as a Muslim, you look at it the first time and you're like, I'm not allowed to, it's ridiculous. So then you think about it and you look at what it's done. This isn't here to box me in. This isn't here to tell me that I can't have things that I want. This is here to protect me from all of the problems that come along with doing otherwise. Because if we had just followed this all along, we wouldn't even know about the problems of money. Because none of us would have ever experienced them. Very similarly with relationships, we have a verse here from the Quran, and I'm just going to read the English. Those who humble themselves in their prayers, who avoid vain talk, who are active in deeds of charity, who abstain from sex, except with those joined to them in the marriage bond, or whom their right hands possess. For in their case, they are free from blame. And this verse is from the 23rd surah of the Quran, and it's actually 6 verses. It's verses 1 through 6. And so here, very simple concept, and this isn't something that Islam has a trademark on, but that abstain from sex, except with those to whom you are joined in marriage. It's a very simple concept. I mean, I can think back and, I think of personally in my family. I remember my father telling me, in the 80s when he was engaged, and they would go to his aunt, and, she would, they were engaged to be married, and they had to sleep on opposite ends of the house. They had to sleep in different rooms, in different beds, and my aunt was strict, and, like, we will not have sin in our home. You will not, and she's not Muslim, Christian lady, South Carolina. We will not have sin in our home. Stay on opposite sides of the house at night. And my father always tells the story because about 10, 15 years later when her kids grew up, like that rule was like out the window. But by the 90s and the 2000s and today, it's even become much more common in Christian homes and most homes throughout the country where it's expected that people date and sleep together before marriage. It's almost like it's understood that the times have changed. And with it, we have all of the problems of relationships, or I like how some people call it drama. All of the problems that go along with dating and relationships and, who's sleeping with whom, or who said what to whom, or, other parent of this person's child is calling this problem, and we hear these problems all the time, and some of us might even experience them. And it's an entire set of problems that dominate our culture. Most of what we see in television and movies is built around this. And it's an entire concept that if no one had sex outside of marriage, We wouldn't even, no one in here would think of it. It would be so foreign, right? Like what do you mean you have problems with someone else's baby mother? How? But wouldn't they be, why are you having problems like that? It would be foreign. And it's funny because as an American, we have some people who come from other countries and they come over here and you hear them listen to other people and they have that quizzical look on their face like, well, if she's the mother of his child, why, so that's his wife, you mean? We're like, no, they're not married. But no, they can't be. That they must have been married for them to be like, it doesn't even process because they come from a country where you would be married first. Like they've never heard of such a thing. And so, times have changed, and we've become modern, and we have our relationships the way we want to have them. And yet now we have this whole series of problems that come into our lives as a result of it. And so what looks like constricting, what looks like a rule, that is condemning or chastising or boxing you in, from the all-forgiving and all-merciful and all-compassionate God, was really just mercy and compassion from the start. Something say, here, just do this, and you'll never have to experience all of these problems. You'll never even know what they are. And lastly, I have the second verse from Galatians. This is a hadith, which is a saying from the life of the prophet. And it says, "O young people, whoever among you can support a wife should marry, for that is more modest for the gaze and safer for your private." And this was one of the many sayings from our prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, encouraging people to get married. Because in parts of the Quran it even says, the sex desire is a natural desire, it is given by God. And so you should be married, and you should be responsible with it. You share it with the person you love. Have children, raise good children. It's understood, sex wasn't an evil thing, but be married. So none of those problems occur. And lastly on health, we have a verse. Say, I find nothing in that which has been revealed to me, anything forbidden to be eaten by one who wishes to eat it, unless it be a dead animal or blood poured forth or the flesh of swine. For that surely is impure, or meat of an animal which is slaughtered as a sacrifice for others than the one God. But whosoever is forced by necessity, without willful disobedience, nor transgressing due limits, certainly your Lord is oft forgiving and most merciful. And this is from the 6th surah of the Quran, verse 145. And I've gone over my time, so I'll try to cover this one real quick. In the matters of health, we eat, we drink, what we want, what tastes good, what's part of different cuisines or cultures. And we've actually seen, particularly with the pork or the flesh of swine, where, when historians look back at it, it wasn't until about, I want to say, 150 years ago, where they developed a way to kind of cure and keep pork, so that way it didn't spoil. And before that, pork used to be the meat that spoiled faster than any other. And so when people bought pig or slaughtered a pig to eat or kept a pig, right? After the first time they cooked or had some, it was the most dangerous any other time after that. And it was the most likely to make them sick or make them ill. Because you never know, you couldn't keep up with how fast it would go bad, how difficult it was to cure or keep. And like other things today, we can see, why would this be? But that it was a blessing. That these things of, not drinking, avoiding mind-altering substances, avoiding meats that are impure, avoiding, it talks about that the animal should be cared for. The animal should live a peaceful life, and it should die with dignity and peace. As they mentioned earlier when introducing me, that I'm a science teacher. And one of the things that I love about this, particularly with eating meat that has been slaughtered humanely and peacefully, is that when an animal dies and it's afraid, it releases, there are certain chemicals that get released. When it's afraid, it's in that fight or flight. The parasympathetic nervous system is shooting chemicals off. And there are fear hormones that get into all of the muscles because it's afraid. Just like people. When we get afraid, the adrenaline kicks in, things are going. When an animal dies afraid, these things, the last thing that it puts out into its body, all of these chemicals that make you afraid, that make you anxious. And when we eat those animals, we're eating those chemicals. We're putting them into our body. And studies have shown that they tend to make us less calm, a little more. They activate our own responses and systems. But when an animal dies peacefully with God, there's none of that. The meat is pure, it's clean, it's been blessed. And it's a blessing for us to eat, to be nourished and healthy. And so when we get away from what was originally taught to us, when we get away from the basics, the rules that, why do I have to follow that? Well, when we don't, we find out why. And sadly, so much of what we have in our, so many of the problems we have in our society today, and I personally think all of the problems, but are based around things that we've gotten away from. So, that, I'd like to thank you for your time, letting me speak here tonight. And Brother Hamza.